Hello, so on today's video we're going to have a look at some algebra. This is grade 2 pushing into grade 3 and it's on solving equations. There are, as always, I've got 4 difficulty levels similar to the questions I've got up on the screen at the minute, and I'll show you this file at the end. In order to do these sorts of questions you need to know or be comfortable with quite a few different areas of maths. So type 1 involves inverse operations. So the inverse of adding is subtracting, the inverse of timesing is dividing. BIDMAS, the order of operations, you might have learned it as BODMAS. And then type 2 will involve some negative numbers, so you need to be comfortable with those. Type 3 is going to involve some expanding brackets. In order to do that you need to be able to multiply some algebraic terms together. And then some of the wordy ones we look at, question 6, will involve collecting like terms. And you need to be able to do all of those things to get to type 4. So you need to be able to do all the type 1 things to do type 2, all the type 2 and 1 things to do type 3, and so on. So 4 different examples to start with. Okay, so it represents, in this case, a number, and we need to find out what that number is. Now remember, 5i means 5 times I. So if I was thinking about this in terms of BIDMAS, the first thing that I would have done to I is multiplied it by 5, and then I would have added 3, and the answer gives me 23. I'm going to show you something we can use called the funnel method to solve this. So to start with, I'm just going to rewrite the equation 5i plus 3 equals 23, and I'm going to draw a kind of funnel thing like this. Now the idea is I want to, when a question says solve, we want to end up with I equals something or something equals I. Now remember, there's an invisible 1 in front of this, but we don't need to write that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we want to look at this plus 3 bit. I have basically multiplied a number by 5 and then I've added 3 and I've got 23. So I want to do the inverse operation of that add 3 bit. The inverse of add 3 is to subtract 3. Now the thing with equations is that whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to take away 3 from that. Now a really common mistake people will make here is that they will try and take away 3i from 5i. Because that 5i's got an I attached to it, 5 lots of I, you cannot take away 3 from it. So that 5i stays exactly the same, 5i. And then if I've got plus 3 and I take away 3, if I added 3 and then took away 3, those things would actually cancel each other out. So I don't need to write those ones. And then 23, because that hasn't got an I involved in it, I can take away 3 from that. That gives me 20. Now the next thing I'm going to do is this means 5 lots of I, or 5 times I, which is the same as I times 5. So I want to divide by the number in front of the letter. We call that the coefficient. So I'm going to divide by 5. Whatever I do to one side I have to do to the other. So 5i divided by 5 gives me 1 lot of I, but again I don't need to write the 1. 20 divided by 5 gives you 4. So that's my answer. And you could always check it in here. 5 lots of 4 is 20. 20 plus 3 gives you 23. So that one works. Okay, next one. Now this is exactly the same, apart from you need to watch out for your for any negative numbers and when you add, subtract, multiply or divide them. So I'm going to start again by writing 3p plus 6 equals negative 15 and draw my funnel method. I want to get rid of this plus 6. I want to do the inverse of adding 6. So I'm going to take away 6 from this side, and when I do that, remember I have to take away 6 from the right hand side as well. That leaves me with, remember you cannot take away 6 from anything with a p in it. but then the plus 6 and the take away 6, they will cancel each other out, so you don't need to write that. Now this is where people go wrong. People just see the 15 and they take away 6 from that, and they would write -9. Remember, with negative numbers, if 0's here, minus 15 is down here, if I'm taking away, I'm actually moving to the left. So the number is getting further and further away from 0, which actually gives me -21. Now, because I want to end up with p equals, I need to divide by the number in front of the letter. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So on the left hand side I'm just left with p, and on the right hand side 21 divided by 3 would be 7. But remember, I said at the start, for the type 2 questions you need to be comfortable with operations with negatives. We are doing -21 divided by +3. Now a negative divided by a positive gives me a negative. So the answer to this one is -7. And you could always double check this one again. That's your answer, but again you could always double check it. Lots of p, 3 times -7 is -21. If I then add 6 to that, that comes out with -15. So we've got that one right. Okay, next one. This looks a little bit more complicated because it has the brackets in it. You can turn this into a question like either type 1 or type 2, one of the first two examples that we know how to solve, by expanding the bracket. So to start with, I'm just going to write out the equation again. 3 lots of 5b take away 3 equals 21. Now I'm going to do my funnel method. I'm going to start over here separately by expanding the brackets. So I'm just going to temporarily ignore the equals 21 bit on the end, this bit here, and I'm just going to expand those brackets. So whichever method you prefer. I've done another video on expanding brackets, so if you're not sure how to do this, you can go away and have a look at those ones. I'm going to use the grid method. 3 times 5b gives me 15b. 3 times -3 gives me -9. Remember, we're multiplying those things together. So when I expand the brackets on the left, I get 15b take away 9. So I'm just going to, instead of this bit, I'm going to write the expanded version underneath, which is 15b take away 9. Then I'm going to write that equals 21. As soon as you have done that, you've actually turned this one into a question, just like the question 1, the example 1 I did. So we are now going to do the inverse operation. So instead of the inverse of subtract 9 is to add 9. So I do that to both sides. Again, don't make that really common mistake of adding 9 to the 15b. That remains 15b. And then on the right hand side of the equation, 21 plus 9 gives me 30. So now this means 15 lots of b, 15 times b equals 30. So I'm just going to divide both sides by 15. So we're asking ourselves how many 15s go into 30, and that is 2. So that's our answer. Again, you could always check this following the rules of BIDMAS. If b was 2, you'd have to do what was in the brackets first. So 5 times 2 is 10. 10 take away 3, and then we multiply that bit by 7. Sorry, we multiply that bit by 3. So this bit here would mean 3 times 7, which is 21, and that one works. Okay, last ones are a little bit more tricky because they are a bit more wordy. So you need to be able to write an algebraic expression. Now, an expression is not an equation. Expression is just a collection of letters and numbers. So if Ed is C years old, Andy is 2 times older than Ed, and Rachel is 13 years older than Ed, the total of their ages is 85. So there's two parts to this question. We have to form an equation to represent that problem, and then part B, we have to use that equation to find their ages. The first thing I'd suggest you do with this question is to write an expression for each of their ages. So write expressions for their ages. So Ed, we are told in the question, is C years old. So we're going to say Ed is C. Andy is 2 times older than Ed. So whatever Andy's age is double or 2 lots of Ed's age. So if Ed is C years old, we don't know what that number is yet, but we know that Andy is double that or 2 lots of C. Now in algebra, we don't need that times, so it's just 2C. And then finally, Rachel is 13 years older than Ed. So if Ed is C, Rachel is going to be C, whatever C is, add 13. Now we're told that the total of their ages is 85. That means if I added Ed's age, Andy's age and Rachel's age, I would get 85. So I'm going to just write Ed's age, which is C, plus Andy's age, which is 2C, and we're going to add to that Rachel's age, which is C plus 13. Now when I do that, if I add all those up, we are told in the question that I get 85. So we've actually created an equation here, formed our own equation to represent this problem. What you are now going to do is group together or simplify all the like terms. Now, before you do this, I just suggest going through and any numbers with any terms that are just C without a number in front of them, remember that means one lot of C. So just to avoid confusion, it might be a good idea to do that. Then we're going to group together all the C's. So I'm just going to put a circle around everything with a C in it. And when I do this, I want you to get into the habit of including the sign that comes before as well, not after, in the sign that comes before. So in total, I have 1C plus 2 C's gives me 3 C's, plus another C, that gives me 4C. Then I'm going to do the same with the numbers. In this case, there is only one to worry about, and that's plus 13. And then that is equal to 85. So now we've got a question that we know how to work out. So I'm going to start by taking away 13 from both sides of this equation. That's going to leave me with 4C equals 72. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And that's going to tell me that C is 18. So now that you've found out what C represented, we actually know how old Ed was. So Ed was 18 years old. Andy was double that. So Andy was 36 years old, 2 times 18. And then finally, Rachel was 13 years older than Ed. So however old Ed was, 18 plus 13, that tells me that Rachel was 31 years old. And you could always double check it by just going through and adding these three, 18 plus 36 plus 31, to see if it works, if you get that. And that's it. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now, go back to the question generator. I only concentrated on these ones here with positive coefficients. That just means the number before the letter is a positive number. That won't always be the case. I will do a separate video with negative coefficients, where the number before the letter is a negative. I'll do that in a separate video with some slightly more tricky examples. So as always, when you open this file, which I'll put a link to in the description, you will need to click enable content or enable macros, and that will appear in a yellow ribbon across the top. Once you've tried different questions of different examples, perhaps you want to try all of type 1 first, or all of any of the 4 types of question. Once you've done that, you can then try some mixed up questions, which is a good way of practicing the topic. It shows a really good understanding if you're able to kind of mix and match between them all, and then you can get your answers by clicking on each of these and generate as many questions as you need. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.